Alrighty, guys, welcome. Patch 2.5a. It is coming out soon, and it is, well, it's a banger in terms of content. You have got some awesome content coming your way, specifically 2 new champions, which I'm super excited about. Caitlyn and Jace, they are coming. It's also a Halloween event, of course, Halloween or whatever you want to call it, wherever you're from. That's, of course, coming. Caitlyn's model looks cool as hell, by the way. The model is very much updated to be kind of in line with, I would say, like Arcane Caitlyn. They've kind of removed the sexy, I'd say. Like, Caitlyn was a champion that was designed way back in leagues like olden times, where a lot of their female champions were... You know what I'm trying to say. A lot of the female champions that were designed back then probably weren't designed in the same frame that you would design a female champion these days. And for good reason, because the champion designs of women have got significantly better in recent years. However, she still looks like a badass bitch. Like, she looks cool. So I'm very, very excited for Caitlyn, and I love the kind of the model upgrade that she's had for wildrift here. We also get Jace. By the way, Jace, who I'm really excited about, the way, Jace looks like he looks like an absolute monster Chad in wildrift. Like, look at this guy. I think in League PC, he's a bit sleeker. Like, he's a bit, you know, like a bit thinner, looks a bit taller. Like, in Wild Rift, he looks like a fucking Giga Chad. Look at him. He's got, like, muscles coming out the wazoo. Anyway, definitely looks a little bit more beefy in the Wild Rift model. So, Chad Jace is the model here for Wild Rift, but there we go. We're getting a load of the original spooky skins, like Bewitching Janna. This is very much an old school skin. They're showing, you know, it's a bit of thigh. Like Riot knew what they were doing when they made this skin. Anyway, Bewitching Janna is a cool skin. A lot of people like it, and I would recommend picking it up. It's one of the oldest Halloween skins ever made in League of Legends, I believe. So there you go. We're getting Headhunter Caitlyn and Jace Brighthammer. We're getting Underworld Twisted Fate and Underworld Wukong, so they're also pretty cool skins as well. We are getting some mystery things. There's loads of mystery events. The question mark event. I don't think it's like all these mystery events coming through. So we're just going to get some mysteries for events, which is pretty cool. We're also getting the Hextech Heist. Jace's pocket watch has been stolen. Help Caitlyn track down the culprit. Oh no, not the pocket watch, guys. Not his pocket watch. Goodness gracious. Right, champion changes. By the way, because the Horizon Cup is coming up, I don't know if you guys know about the Horizon Cup, but it's basically one of the first major international Wild Rift tournaments. They are not going to be doing many balance patches in November, so this is probably going to be the last balance patch until maybe end of November, December. So it better be a goddamn good one. Okay, Akshan. They're only nerfing his ult. I don't think that this was... For me, whenever I've played versus Akshan, his ult has not really been the problem child. The problem child is how much damage he does in that stupid swing. Have you guys ever tried to play against an Akshan who just kind of goes all in on you with that dumbass swing really early? That's the problem with Akshan. I don't think this AD on his ratios on his ult are going to change a significant amount. Akshan is like a niche pick. Only you have to be good with Akshan to really make him work. But I do think he's quite oppressive in the right hands. I have been battered in mid by some really good Akshan players. So I don't really think his ult was his problem. I really think the damage he does on his dumbass swing is the problem, especially early game. But his ult, you know, it definitely scaled pretty well. I didn't really feel like his ult was super impactful early on, but it definitely scaled relatively well. So, you know, these changes, you know, they're okay. They tone him back a little bit, but again, I don't think these were the problems with Akshan. I think the problems are his dumbass swing and how much damage he does on it. But regardless, a small nerf to Akshan is probably warranted. I think he is in a strong spot, and I think he'll continue to be in a strong spot, to be honest with you. Darius apparently has been too good. He gets picked a lot. That's fair. You know, like I think especially in Southeast Asia, you see quite a decent amount of Darius picks. And I also think Darius is one of the problems when it comes to like thinking about pick rates in certain elos, especially when you're talking about the elite play, is that pick rates will be very, you know, distorted by draft position as well. And Darius is one of those picks in Baron lane that is safe. Like, he's like Renekton. if you don't know who you're going up against and you're a good Darius player, you can be pretty certain that Darius will be an okay pick. Like in a lot of matchups, like Darius does not have any matchups where you're like, well, I hate that I'm in this matchup. Maybe Camille, maybe Kennen, for instance, but there are a lot of ways that Darius can survive that. Do I think that Darius's heal amount was ludicrous? Not really. But this is just going to nerf his teamfight capabilities more so than his power in the Baron lane. He was already pretty terrible unless he was ahead in team fights, so this is going to make him a little easier to take down. I think realistically it's it's neither here nor there. It's a small change to Darius. I would say it hurts his team fighting capabilities more so, but then if you were behind as a Darius, your team fighting sucked anyway, so this probably isn't a huge deal. A lot of good Darius players will be a little sad about this, but it is what it is. Galio. We're seeing him get stronger due to the input buffering changes, changing the way how his abilities interact with Flash and Hextech Protobelt. We're going to tone down his ultimate cooldown. Fair enough. I think Galio is a really strong pick, but 20 seconds in the late game, 20 seconds on his rank 3 is actually pretty beefy change. But I do think Galio is a really strong pick. I still think Galio will remain a strong pick. I've been loving Galio in mid lane recently, so I think that's fair. It is what it is. It is what it is. I think that's, it is what it is. Like I said, I don't think it's going to massively shift where Galio is in the meta. Graves, he's spiked both in power and popularity. Yeah, for a little bit. Though I have seen Graves kind of drop off again recently. I don't know why. It's the classic 40 HP nerf with an armor per level nerf and a base mana regen nerf. I mean, Graves' early game was where he sucked. This is just going to make it a little easier to abuse his early game. But honestly, I don't think most Graves were taking over games until they got their first item anyway, right? A lot of Graves were not really popping off until they picked up their Bloodthirster at least. So, I think this is sad because I think Graves was a nice pick. It's very different. And I think it's a pick that adds a style of jungle play that only really Master Yi provides right now. There aren't many, like maybe Shyvana. There aren't many junglers that are like hard farm junglers in wildrift. And so I'm a little sad that he's getting hit by the nerf hammer. I'm still sad that no one's really touching Lee Sin anymore. They tried to change Lee Sin last patch. I really don't think it's had an impact on Lee Sin's dominance as a pick in the jungle. I actually ban Lee Sin every game. I also ban Riven whenever I can. In fact, there are so many picks that I like banning. I like banning Riven, Lulu, and Lee Sin more than anything. Mainly Lulu because Jinx Lulu is a dragon lane combo that makes up for you being a bad player. If you can play Jinx Lulu, well, it doesn't take much skill to play Jinx Lulu, but if you play Jinx Lulu, you can beat like most people in solo queue. And Jinx is ludicrously strong. But without Lulu, Jinx kind of sucks. So I ban Lulu because Lulu's much more flexible than Jinx. Jinx can really only be played with Lulu, whereas Lulu can definitely support a variety of different AD carries. We're going off topic. Sad that Graves is getting nerfed. A 40 HP nerf in the early game, especially for a pick like Graves, is actually a relatively big deal because not only does he rely on his true grit passive to make him tanky, any HP nerf is going to be a bigger effective HP nerf based on the way that Graves likes to duel. So I just think it's a little bit sad overall that Graves is taking the nerf hammer here, but he probably was a little too strong. Like the fact that Graves was popping up and being played consistently even in Baron lane probably indicated that he's in a really strong spot. Kaiser. We are nerfing the base damage per missile by 10 at all ranks, and the max single target damage is coming down by actually a pretty decent chunk in the late game. But leaving her scaling intact. So they're just nerfing the base damages on a Cathian Ray. I do think that the single target damage for Kaiser is a bit nutty, especially like early on in a Cathian Reign. So I think this is perfectly fine, and if I'm honest with you, Kaiser probably did warrant a nerf. She has been popular for quite a decent chunk of time. And this probably was the right part of her kit to hit. If you were going to name any part of her kit that was strong, it was definitely her first ability. So that's I think this is a very fair nerf to Kaiser. It's not so big that it makes Kaiser unplayable, but it definitely just chips away at her being like one of the top tier AD carries. So I think that's a good pick. Though weirdly enough, in Origin series, we saw like no Kaiser because everyone was playing like Ezreal and was playing quite a bit of Ashe as well. But yeah, Kaiser, I think, is, fine. The nerf was fine. not the champion. The champion was quite strong. Lucian is getting a bullet damage buff to his culling, basically because he's underperforming. I actually think Lucian's in an okay spot. Like, I've always felt that Lucian's, especially mid, the problem is that if you're trying to buff Lucian in a certain role, you're always going to unbalance him in other roles. The Lucian is a multi-role carry. You can't really say, I don't think you can really say you want to buff him for Dragon Lane, because any buffs that you're going to give him for him in his Dragon Lane presence, sorry, I've got to brush my hair because I've got some knots. Any buffs that you give him in his Dragon Lane presence, it's just obviously going to affect the rest of the map. However, culling bullet damage is whatever, and I think 5 damage per bullet is not a huge increase over the course of his ultimate, and you'd have to hit like every bullet to really see a noticeable impact. It is a very tiny love tap of a buff, and I still think Lucian, he's already in an okay spot, so he's just going to be in an even more okay spot. Nami has been on the top of the support food chain. She has been played a lot recently, actually. Nami's pick rate is very high. They're just nerfing the tidal wave. Alt cooldown nerfs in this game always kind of strike me as a way of like non-nerfing. You know what I mean? Like, they're not willing to really touch numbers per se in terms of damage or healing. So they're just going to say, ultimate cooldown nerf? And like that's like the safe way of nerfing a champion. 10 seconds at every rank, especially when you pick up some ability haste, doesn't mean much, so who cares? Tryndamere, he is too strong in the jungle, so they're going to, well, also quite strong in lane. They're going to nerf the Battle Fury attack speed by 5. 5 in the early game, but also probably a significant amount in the late game, so a 15% nerf in the late game, which is actually a pretty significant nerf to his attack speed in the late game. The problem is that it doesn't really matter what you do to Tryndamere in the late game. It's still Tryndamere in the late game. And so therefore, like, if Tryndamere is getting to the point where that 60% even becomes relevant, he's already kind of probably rolling over the game. So, you know, realistically, it will hurt. It might stop you from getting that, like, 1 in 10 kills that you're going to get. But I think realistically, if Tryndamere is at level 3 ultimate and kind of at the stage of the game where this 60% attack speed buff is relevant, he's already in a good spot. He's already got to the point in the game where he is super strong item-wise. And to be honest with you, this nerf is hard. It is a big nerf. I'm not going to deny it, especially in the late game. That is a significant DPS drop. But he's already super strong at that stage in the game anyway. So they're just trying to tone that down a little bit, and it makes sense. So I think that's fine. Black Cleaver is getting an AD buff because there aren't many people that like to pick it up over like things like Blade of the Ruined King. 5 AD buff is a tiny little love tap of a buff again, and I think I mean the thing is, like, 5 AD is not going to suddenly make you say, like, let's say you're a Darius. 5 AD is not going to suddenly make you go, I want this over Triforce. No, it's not going to. You know, Black Cleaver is something that is like matchup specific or composition specific, and like the 5 AD will be nice if you're going to build it anyway. But like if you're trying to play carry Darius and you know you don't really need the Black Cleaver passive, like you're never going to pick Black Cleaver over Triforce for 5 AD's sake. Like you play Triforce for the Sheen buff. And a bit of the attack speed, so you can stack up your stacks a bit better. But anyway, 5 AD buff is nice, and I think Black Cleaver users, the ones who use Black Cleaver consistently, are a little underloved right now, so it makes a lot of sense. Last Whisper is getting a armor penetration nerf, and they're also then, as a consequence, knocking on armor penetration nerfs to Mortal Reminder and also to Seralda's Grudge, and they're increasing the cost of both these items. I like that they're increasing the cost of Seralda's Grudge and also reducing the armor penetration because, again, I think Zed, first item Seralda's Grudge, is like a super strong pick right now. A lot of people were just like straight up picking this early on or just going Mortal Reminder super early on because it was generally a pretty strong pick all round. Like, you couldn't really go too far wrong. So you're getting a 5 AD nerf on Mortal Reminder as well. So you're going to get much lower percentage armor penetration in the early game. They're going to nerf that by half. So this item is not going to suddenly become ludicrous, you know, as a very early on item. Like Seralda's Grudge and Mortal Reminder are usually supposed to be considered like 3rd or 4th items. Seralda's Grudge passive means that it's much more likely to get picked up early on. But I like that they're saying this really isn't supposed to be like a first item, so we're nerfing it. And I think that's good overall. Plus the fact that like, honestly, armor pen in this game is nutty. Like, armor pen in this game is too good. Tanks who build armor still get shredded. Like the fact that they're keeping it at 30%, you know, it means in the late game tanks are still going to feel pretty bad. But 30% at all levels just meant that even if tanks built up armor in the early game, you were still just getting shredded. So I like this as like an indirect buff to tanks, which is nice because honestly, tanks in the meta right now are useless. Like almost no one plays tank unless you're playing Malphite, Tank Gragas, and sometimes like Garen or something. Like no one plays tanks in the meta. And I think it's because Armor Pen is just a little too strong all round. Force of Nature and Spirit Visage are getting some magic resist buffs. 5 magic resist. It's a little cool buff. It does. There aren't many good magic resist options, honestly. And I think extra little bit of magic resist on both these items is nice because there aren't really many good magic resist options for tanks. And I think again, these are just like a series of item buffs for tanks overall, and hopefully might make tanks a little bit more viable because I like playing tanks, especially in Baron lane, and we aren't getting tanks, you know, just because they're too easy to kill right now. But yeah, that's patch 2.5a. What did you think? Let me know in the comments, guys, and enjoy. You won't get a video today because it is 1:30 in the morning. This is going live, and I'm going to London for work, so I'll see you tomorrow.